discovered in practice. But this is a study. The reason most of you probably won't heard it is the single, I think today it's still the single biggest study in pet food. But most vets have never heard of it.
I have.
You have? Excellent. Very impressed. Elaine.
He's a cranky man.
Yeah. He wasn't a vet, he was a human surgeon. Basically, I'll just give you a background. His job, which would be pretty sure, he had a huge colony of cats, this is in Europe, a huge colony of cats, and his job was to remove the adrenal glands from these cats and then keep them alive on adrenal supplements that he was given of varying concentrations, and the way they used to work out the concentration of the adrenal supplement was the one that kept the cats alive was equal to X, and that's actually how they worked out in the very, very early days, back in the 1930s. So his job was basically nothing to do with cats being a vet, diet, anything. He had a huge population, he had to perform tricky surgery, and you had to then keep them alive with supplements, and then go back to the laboratory people and say, yep, supplement B is the one that is keeping them alive. So in summary, what he basically discovered accidentally, and I'll put some background on it, that at a certain time of the year where he was in Europe, I think he was near a ski resort. So for 6 months of the year, the resort was open, there was snow, and he used to get all the food for his laboratory animals from the resort leftovers. So it was all cooked scraps and bits and pieces. Second 6 months of the year, the resort's all closed, and he had to go to the local abattoir to source his food. And basically, I don't know whether he was lazy or whatever, but he just decided rather than cooking it, he'd just feed the raw food to the cats when it got straight from the abattoir. And what he noticed, just as a general observation, was that when he was feeding the raw meat to the cats, they were all healthier. They survived surgery better, everything was good. And when he went back to feeding the cooked meat products, it was really just cooked meat and milk that he was feeding these guys, the health deteriorated. So he actually decided that he thought it was quite clinically significant and he would actually do a proper study. So he did a 10-year study, 900 cats over 9 generations, and he basically just divided his cats in two, randomly. One lot got meat scraps, organ meats, bone and raw unpasteurised milk. Second group got the same scraps and meat, but they were cooked and the milk was pasteurised. So that's simple, okay. Basically he's heat treated the food. So this is a nice example of why cooking may not be such a good idea when you see what actually happens. So his cats on raw food basically did pretty well. He was obviously breeding a lot of cats because he was killing a lot of cats at the same time, so he had a constant breeding thing. 5 kittens per litter, a few birthing problems, 9 generations, not much change in their health. Cats in the second group on the cooked food, basically from the first generation onwards, started to show problems. Increased death rate, smaller litter sizes, poor mothering, dull rough coats, which we talked about, loss of vitality in the animal's condition. Second generation onwards started with vision problems, which I can probably tell you right now is probably related back to taurine deficiency. Lots of infections, dermatitis, arthritis, heart disease, which again probably cardiomegaly, allergies, gingivitis, periodontal disease, inflamed joint, Calcium density went from 17% to 4% after 4 generations on cooked food. So that's that binding up of calcium just by heat treating it. Fertility declined, perinatal mortality increases. Any of you have dealt with breeders before? That's a big one. Bad breeders always seem to have small litter sizes and a high perimortality rate. And again, interestingly, behaviour on the cooked group, the cats became aggressive to each other and to the handlers. So these cats, like we talked about before, you can pacify them. These cats got angry when they were being fed cooked food. One of the things that I've always argued strongly, gastrointestinal parasites, people say, oh, if you feed raw meat, dogs and cats will get a hit the parasites. Exactly the opposite occurred. Gastrointestinal parasites were a major problem in the cooked food group, not in the group that were fed raw food. Cause of death, pneumonia, lung abscesses, diarrhoea and infection in kittens. Why did he stop his study? Pretty interesting. By 9 generations on that particular diet, the cats had become so sterile that they were basically had stopped reproducing to the point where he had to cease his study. So, interesting, thought he'd challenge it. What he found was that if he reversed their diet, changing from cooked back to raw, he could reverse most of the symptoms. But, which I found scary, up until 3 generations on cooked food. When he got to the 4th generation, he was finding that some of the changes were irreversible, which is suggesting the effect of epigenetics, that we're basically finding that there's a mutational or generational effect that after so many generations, some of these changes are becoming genetic changes in the animals. which we should probably can be concerned about given how many generations we're onto. Another one just interesting. I've had a lot of cat poo to get rid of, so I used to go and bury it in his veggie garden. And when he found that, yes, the raw food feces basically was a good fertiliser. The cooked food killed everything. Basically, he couldn't grow his beans and his grass and bits and pieces. So again, just suggesting that there's some sort of toxic change. I can certainly assure you that the toxic feces that come out of cats on rotten diets are pretty awful. And look, for me, these are my comments on it. We can look at a study like this and go, it's old, it's this, it's that, it's not relevant today. We know about vitamins, we know about taurine, we know about arachidonic acid. But the reality is, if you just look at all of that and go, well, all he did was cook the food, ask a simple statement. Is cooking a good idea for cats? No. And you can't argue it. I can't explain all those things. I don't have to. All I have to know is that proves to me it's not a good idea. And if you want to add all of those extra vitamins and minerals and things back into that food to try and make it as balanced as possible, how do you know you got it right? How do we know that they've got it right now? How do we sit back and go, I'm totally comfortable that these companies are telling me the truth, that it's completely balanced and these animals will live a perfectly healthy life. And I can just tell you in practice, it just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen unless you feed a healthy raw food diet. So for me, it's a no-brainer. Can't explain all of what's going on in there. I'm sure there's micronutrition and other things that we can't pick up on. But it's a bit of a, it's a good wake-up call. And there's a really good book and research. He ended up joining up with Weston Price. I'm not sure if you know Weston Price, who basically Weston Price was a doctor who was a orthodontal surgeon. He went searching the world. He looked at all the indigenous cultures around the world, looking at their teeth and how healthy they were, and then the effect when they were basically put onto Western diets, and how their dental disease and the caries and the cavities and the change in the teeth, the event of braces and all those things happened in these societies. He went out searching for one culture that was 100% vegetarian. Because he was vegetarian, he thought that was the cure for everything. And unfortunately, he never found a single culture on the planet that was vegetarian, just by the nature of where they lived. They all seem to have some meat in there. But there's a Price Poppinger Foundation now that talk about this research and relevant to modern day stuff. So if you're interested in that sort of stuff, go and Google Price Poppinger. You'll get all of that info. And as I said, Weston Price book is quite extraordinary when you see what happened to the teeth of humans, basically, as the on-veg of Western diet. Yeah, there you go, summation. Don't feed cooked pet food. Simple. Biologically available raw food, or appropriate raw food is the way to go. So there we go. I reckon it's probably got you enough. So I'm looking at any more. No.
I'm happy for you to do more. All those in favour of more?
Do one more, do the bones one. Just it's a really quick one.
Yep.
Can you also just briefly talk about arthritis?
I can indeed.
Yeah, not necessarily. Yeah.
That's